In the city of Liyue, there is a mysterious man that goes by many names. Zhongli, Lagamundo. God of War, the Groundbreaker. Lord of Rock, Exuvia, Prime of the Adepti. Rex Lapis, God of Contracts?
だから僕と契約して魔法少女になってよ。
Nico Dessou.
Zhongli is a Geopolar character, and he takes control of the battlefield with this massive Geo Rod. With his rod and spear, he will penetrate all who stand in your way. This is the Zhongli character guide. Zhongli's normal attack pattern is a series of 6 attacks. The first 5 attacks are fairly quick, with the 5th performing a multi-hit spin, and the 6th is slower but deals the most damage. For his charge attack, Zhongli dashes forward, dealing physical damage while erecting a line of spears in his path. While his attacks look cool when compared with our only other spear character, it suggests that normal attacks won't make up the bulk of Zhongli's damage. His damage ratios are worse than Xiangling's, and she's a free 4-star character. Wait a second. Alright folks, let's pack it up here. Zhongli confirmed D tier as a Geo Archon. He is certainly dirt tier. But wait, there's more. Zhongli's true strength lies in his elemental skill and elemental burst. His elemental skill, Dominus Lapidus, sends his massive rod right into the ground and turns him into a pillar man. The cooldown for creating the rod is 4 seconds, but the rod itself stays rock hard for 30 seconds on the field. The rod sends out a shockwave every 2 seconds, damaging the enemies nearby, and also resonates with nearby Geo constructs, friendly or foe. While the damage scaling, like his normal attacks, is pretty bad, each shockwave has a 50% chance to generate an elemental particle. This makes Zhongli's rod a very consistent way to generate energy from off-field, as well as crystallization shards. When holding Zhongli's E, he sends out a shockwave of Geo damage. The shockwave will generate a shield that scales with Zhongli's maximum HP and also drain Geo energy from nearby objects. These objects can be pillars, shields, and Fatui shields. Note that Zhongli can only drain a maximum of 2 Geo objects per cast. This ability also has a cooldown of 12 seconds, so it's recommended to set down Zhongli's pillar first before you use this ability. Zhongli's Q is Planet Befall. He sends down a moon and wait, I know this scene! Anyways, this ability has incredibly high scale and also petrifies enemies, which is a new effect unique to Zhongli that stuns enemies for a period of time. This stun affects all non-boss enemies, so it is incredibly useful. Coupled with its 40 energy cost, and it's clear to see that the majority of Zhongli's power budget was allocated here. For talent prioritization, you want to prioritize Planet Befall, then Dominus Lapidus, and then his normal attacks. Zhongli's Ascension talents increase the power of his shield and the damage of his burst respectively, so I won't go into much detail. Now, looking at the numbers of Zhongli's kit, they seem rather underwhelming. His basic attacks scale worse than Xiangling at the same level, and you're guaranteed to get her. His E, while fun to use and provides a lot of utility, has hilariously bad damage ratios. His Q has one of the highest scaling damage ratios until you realize that as a Geo character, he cannot benefit from reactions, so characters like Child and Mona will still massively outdamage him. In my opinion, there is no doubt that Zhongli's kit is underpowered. So how did this happen? How did everyone's favorite Geo Daddy become like this? I have 2 theories. Zhongli's kit originally featured damage amplification like Mona's Q. that will make the ability extremely strong, especially at 40 cost as opposed to 80 cost. However, they removed this part of his ability and possibly didn't balance the rest of his numbers to account for it. The second possibility is that Zhongli is simply way ahead of our current meta. At the moment, Petrification is not necessary in our endgame content. However, on paper, the ability is nuts. You can disable enemies for 4 seconds, 6 with Constellation 4, on a 12-second cooldown. That's a 33% uptime on the debuff. Mark my words, Mihoyo is going to release some super difficult content next patch just to prove that Zhongli is useful. Now let's look at Constellations. Overall, Zhongli's strong constellations are at C1 and C4. His first constellation gives an additional pillar which has an independent resonance rate, essentially doubling your DPS from your E, which is bad. His fourth constellation increases the AoE of Planet Befall and increases the uptime on Petrification by 2 seconds. Anyways, that about sums up the kit portion of the guide, so now we move on to combos. So Zhongli has really bad damage, but he has really fun combos. So first are the normal attacks into charge attacks. Any of your normal attacks can lead into a charge attack, and your charge attacks can also combo into charge attacks. If you do this correctly, you can stagger enemies by just spamming charge attack, which is not doable on Zhongli. Another really fun combo to do is a full normal combo into the pillar. If you do this correctly, you can send certain enemies flying into the sky and then fall back down and suffer fall damage. Fall damage scales with max HP and is true damage, so often this will be the largest number you'll ever see on your Zhongli. Now, this combo is probably the most useful in increasing your DPS. You do your normal attack and jump cancel to spin, leaving the spear out so you can deal more damage. Alright, let's move on to gearing. Firstly, let's go over weapons. If you're a free-to-play or low spender, I would recommend you to go with the highest rarity weapon you have. You should prioritize your stats like this. Only take the physical damage percentage spears if you plan to build Zhongli as your physical carry, but like I said earlier, please don't. If you purchase the Battle Pass, I highly recommend you get Deathmatch for Zhongli. It has an extremely high crit rate substat, and it also has a decent effect. If you're a whale, first, come support me on my Patreon. Secondly, you should definitely pull for Zhongli's signature weapon, Vortex Vanquisher. Not only does it look extremely cool on him, it also gives massive attack buffs in both its substats and its effect. I cannot stress how OP this weapon is. Next, artifacts. Depending on how you plan to use Zhongli, you will gear him differently. The most ideal setup for him as a support is 4-piece Noblesse
oblige.
Noblesse oblige. However, if you already have another Noblesse oblige user on your team like Ningguang, I do not recommend this since the attack bonuses do not stack. Your alternative supported build is 4-piece Archaic Petra, since Zhongli rods can easily generate crystallized shards. Do note that you need to pick up a shard with Zhongli to proc the effect. Zhongli's burst-oriented build focuses on stacking as much damage as possible into the rock. You'll take 2 set Petra for the Geo damage bonus and 2 set Noblesse Oblige for the elemental burst damage. If you're absolutely dead set on physical carry Zhongli, take 4-piece Gladiator's Finale or 4-piece Retracing the Lead. Team compositions. Zhongli is typically the last character you would slot into a team. As he doesn't fulfill any of the traditional 3 roles, he's often an optional character to slot in. Given the resonating nature of Zhongli's kit, it's highly recommended that you pair him with another Geo character, either Geo Traveler or Ningguang. If you pair him with a Traveler, you will most likely bring in a secondary DPS and a healer along with him. If paired with Ningguang, Ningguang can act as a healer with Prototype Malice, allowing you to run 2 other DPSs in your team. It's important to note that double Geo Resonance is in fact very strong and gives a significant boost to DPS. Considering the current meta, I can't recommend you to pull for Zhongli based on his kit's power. Zhongli fulfills a purely defensive role that is not needed in current content. While his shield and petrification are very strong, they are simply unnecessary when you can instead slot in a DPS increase in support like Bennett, or another burst damage deal. I hope that Mihoyo will give Zhongli a buff sometime in the near future, but considering current information, I also don't think that's very likely. Either way, in our hearts, Zhongli will always be an S tier pick. Also, he's a literal god at mining rocks.